Hi folks, Pat Higgins here. This is hopefully the first in a series of vlogs about rewriting, and not just about rewriting and screenwriting in general, but also about the rewrite process for a very specific project. Now, I've done a few webinars, I've done a few kind of vlogs talking about different aspects of filmmaking and screenwriting. Obviously I do kind of live shows and stuff like that as well, but I've been looking for a project that I could work on, that I could talk about while I was working on it, which would maybe kind of open up the way that I try and tackle doing all this sort of stuff, and it might be useful to people. And so I was trying to think, all right, well, how might this potentially work? How could I talk people through at least my process? Process, it sounds incredibly, incredibly sophisticated for my version of screenwriting, which ultimately is often geared towards the splatterier, sillier end of movies. Not always, sometimes I write serious stuff, but this particular project is in that kind of splattery arena. But I thought it would be cool if I was able to explain what I go through in order to make a project viable and, you know, potentially sellable, or for me to get it to a point where I'm happy to put it into production through my own company. If you've never come across my stuff before, I tend to write horror. Sometimes I will write a script and we will make that on a micro budget through my own production company, which is Jinx Media. Sometimes I sell them to third parties and they are then made on a larger scale, sometimes cinema release, sometimes straight to home entertainment or whatever it is. So that's kind of what I am and who I am, I guess. But the issue there is that every time I tend to end up kind of resetting to zero. Like, I don't have a workload that I can strategically make my way through. I will invariably have a bunch of projects that are kind of on the go at any one given time, and then I have to work out which ones I'm going to pay attention to, which means that my in progress folder is always huge, because sometimes I'll come up with an idea that I fall in love with and I think is brilliant, and I will work on it and work on it and work on it, and then I will polish it, and then I will refine it, and then I will sell it to a third party, or will make it into a movie. Sometimes an idea might flourish briefly and I think, yeah, that's amazing, and then in the cold light of day I look at it and go, that's garbage, and I never ever touch it again. So I'm always looking at my half-finished projects folder for things that I want to prioritise, stuff that I want to stick onto the front burner. Now, this might be because I think I've got a potential route to selling a particular script. It might be because I've got a window in which I could potentially put something into production for my own micro budget company. But I've always got all these projects on the go. People who've either read my blogs or heard any of my stage stuff or whatever might have heard this story before, but in order for this blog to make sense, I need to tell this story. A few years ago, I had a period of intense sleep deprivation. Some parents out there might know, or at least guess at what kind of prompted this, but either way, for about 6 months, both my wife and I very, very rarely slept for over 45 minutes at a time. That's a very, very difficult way to exist. It takes its toll on you as a human being. But I kind of made it through this 6 months of, as I say, very rarely getting more than 45 minutes sleep on the bounce before being woken up, and then having a period of being awake and then going back to sleep, which means that you never complete a full sleep cycle. And this has various sort of damaging effects on human beings. Now, one of these effects is that it really, really damages your ability to make memories, because quite a lot of I've read up some of the biology of this, quite a lot of the way that we actually form memory happens while we sleep. And obviously, if you're only ever sleeping in 45-minute bursts and then being woken up, you never get to fully complete your sleep cycles, and so you don't generate memories properly. Short-term memory is easier, but long-term memory is kind of out the window if you're not completing your sleep cycles. So anyway, after 6 months of never sleeping at all, really, other than in these little things, that situation eased up, and I started being able to sleep again. I started being able to make long-term memories again, and was able to get back to work in much the way that I had been previously. What happened was I then got into a conversation with a producer at some point who asked me which projects I had on the go that I was interested in. So what things I had in my folder, the folder of projects that I was working on at that point. And I said to them, oh, well, I've got this, and I listed a whole bunch of different projects. Or some of these were ideas, some of them were rough drafts. And I mentioned a project called Chainsaw Fairytale. Now, as far as I was concerned, Chainsaw Fairytale was an idea that I had rather than anything else. The idea that I had for Chainsaw Fairytale would be that you would effectively mash together a sort of Disney-style fairy tale world and the aesthetics of a slasher movie. And what you do is you drop a character effectively from a kind of slasher movie environment into this Disney-like environment, and their influence would in some way corrupt the world that they'd ended up in, so that the Disney laws, if you like, I've got to stop saying Disney because they'll sue me. I said it again. A generic fairy tales. I hasten to add, we are not trampling on any kind of intellectual property here. But in this generic fairy tale world, you drop a horror movie character, and gradually the laws of the universe start to change, so that, you know, if somebody produces a sword in an animated fairy tale movie, you can be fairly sure they're not going to lop someone's head off with it. There will be a sword fight and they will be disarmed. You know, it's that kind of thing. Whereas in a slasher movie, if someone produces a sharp implement, it's going to be a bloodfest. So my idea on Chainsaw Fairytale was, if you take one of these worlds and you gradually corrupt it into another one, where the laws of the universe that have always looked after the just and ensured that no one ever dies and no one ever gets hurt, and then you're gradually darkening the tone of it visually and narratively so it starts to resemble a slasher movie. I thought this was a really fun idea. I liked it. And so this became Chainsaw Fairytale, the idea of Chainsaw Fairytale. Now, I then had this period of sleep deprivation. Out the other side, producer says, all right, so what have you got? And I said, oh, I've had this idea, Chainsaw Fairytale. And he said, all right, what have you got for that? And I thought, I don't think I've ever really put much down on paper. I've always had it as an idea in my head. And then I thought about it and I thought, hang on, I think I wrote a 4-page treatment for it. So taking the narrative and spreading it out into 4 pages to explain how the whole thing's going to break down. I thought, I don't remember it very well, and I don't think I polished it very much, but I'm pretty sure I wrote a 4-page treatment for it. So I start digging around through all of the folders on my hard drive, and I find, you know, you do a word search, Chainsaw Fairytale, and I found this one that was a 1-page treatment for it. Just a 1-pager saying, okay, this is the setup, and this is how it works, this is our central character, this is the world they go through. And I looked at it and I thought, no, I'm sure I did one that was slightly more detailed than this. I'm sure I did more than 1 page. And so I carried on digging, and I found another file, and it was a complete 105-page screenplay of Chainsaw Fairytale that I had no recollection of writing whatsoever. This was a 105-page screenplay that I'd written during my sleep deprivation 6 months, which meant that I was able to form short-term memories, which is obviously how you would be able to write a script. But I not only had no recollection of what happened within that script when I opened it, I also had no recollection whatsoever of having written it. This was an amazing opportunity for me as a screenwriter to actually read my own work as if I was someone else, as if I was someone reading it for the first time with no preconceptions, just here's how it goes. And that was an amazing experience. I'm not going to say it was worth having 6 months of sleep deprivation for, but it was an astonishing thing to be able to do. And I think it's something that very, very few people would ever be able to experience. To give you some idea of the totality of my lack of recollection of this script, there's a sequence in it, about 2/3 of the way through, where there is an entire set piece that lasts for 5 pages, which has clearly only been constructed so that I can get to one punchline that I evidently had fallen in love with. So because I liked this one punchline, everything that precedes it is clearly just gearing up to get us towards this one punchline. For anybody looking for screenwriting tips, don't spend 5 pages trying to get to one punchline. That is not an effective use of your time. However, it's exactly what I did on this occasion. But to give you an idea of how complete my lack of recall was, I not only couldn't remember writing the script, I didn't even remember what the punchline was until I got to it. So I was able to read this 105-page script with no recollection of having written it. And what was it like? It's not like anything else I've ever written, because it was not written under the usual circumstances in which I would write. It has moments that I think are brilliant. And believe me, I'm not trying to go, oh, I'm such a talented screenwriter. There are moments that are brilliant by accident, because it was clearly written in this kind of mental haze where I was connecting different things I wouldn't have normally connected. So that kind of thing produced material that my more conscious brain would never have allowed through. I'd have thought, no, that's stupid, or that's silly, or that's way too abstract. But when you see it on paper, you go, oh my God, it actually works. But normally I would have self-censored and it would have never made it out there. So there's bits of it that are great. And my God, there are problems with it. I mean, there really, really are massive problems with this script. So, effectively, what I thought might be fun was, I dug it out again and I read through it and I thought there's enough stuff here that I really, really like, that there's something salvageable in this whole 105-page fever dream that I've produced around an idea that I had prior to that. And I like the idea. And I really like some of the stuff that happens in it. But the screenplay as it stands at the moment is a bit of a wreck. So, if I was looking for something to hang a series of vlogs on, about screenwriting process and about the way that you would tackle everything from structure to character to theme, how to make sure that your third act is really punchy and all these sorts of things, I thought Chainsaw Fairytale would be a really, really interesting one to hang it on. Because that way, it takes a leap of faith though, because I think for me to make that work, I've got to let you guys read the script. And as I say, that as a screenwriter, I'd never normally let anyone read a first draft in the best of times. To let people read a first draft that represents effectively some kind of really, really weird version of the way that I would write requires a real leap of faith. So I'm not 100% sure yet that that's what I'm going to do, that I'm going to throw out the script and let you kind of follow it along and give me feedback and we can kind of join in and go on some sort of journey with this script together. I think that's a really, really cool idea, but I haven't quite reached that level of faith yet. I think that's what I'm going to do. So whether or not the later vlogs in this series become, I will take a scene and then maybe have that scene available, or whether I'll just say, oh, hell with it, if people either sort of sign up on, I've got like a little screenwriting community thing, which I'll put the URL for here. It might be that if people have signed up to that, I might make it available, although I still haven't entirely committed to that idea. But either way, I want to take it forward and I want to rewrite this sucker and I want to open up that process, because this is just such a weird little journey and I can't resist the idea of taking people along with it. So let me know, hit me up, follow me on Twitter, join the community thing, leave some comments, and if this never goes any further and I never record another blog about it, I hope you enjoyed it as a story, because it's just such a weird thing.